What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking Penn State in big games. If you saw the community post earlier, we had a little bit of engagement on that. And we got some thoughts on why Penn State can't win the big games and what the record is in big games. So since 2014, when James Franklin took over and the college football playoff era officially began, Penn State and James Franklin are 3-17. Yes, you heard that right. 3-17 versus top 10 teams. Atrocious record. I'm going to break down a little bit as to why that is. And can 2024 be the year that Penn State turns it around? The schedule sets up nicely. We will see. Penn State's 3 wins in this 11-year span under James Franklin were the 2 wins in 2016 over Ohio State with the kick 6. You know, we all Buckeye fans disgustingly remember that one. And, of course, the win over Wisconsin in the Big Ten Championship. And then their only other win was in 2022 versus Utah in, I think that was the Rose Bowl, or maybe, no, not the Rose Bowl, some other bowl game. In every other game versus a top 10 ranked opponent at the time, Penn State has not only fallen short, but more often than not, really fallen short. We're talking about some lopsided victories. Now, of course, versus my Buckeyes specifically, they seem to always play as tough, whether it be home or away, with the occasional blowout thrown in there as well by the Buckeyes. They have a fear factor, it appears, with playing the Wolverines, which dates back to even 2005 in Ann Arbor, the Mario Manningham miracle at Michigan, where they won with 1 second left in a controversial short touchdown pass from Chad Henne to Mario Manningham. They haven't won in Ann Arbor since that moment, and even before that moment. They have this mental blockage where they just cannot play in the big house. So you throw in all the losses versus Michigan and Ohio State's world, but they also got some losses to Kirk Ferentz in Iowa, as well as Michigan State's Mark D'Antonio when he was the head coach there. Now, Penn State has beaten Michigan under James Franklin a couple of times, actually, so give them credit, but they're not top 10 teams, nor were they nearly even close to top 10 teams in those moments. Even in the 2016 season, when Penn State won the Big Ten championship, Michigan beat them 49-10 in Ann Arbor. It's outrageously blown out in that contest. Went on to lose the Rose Bowl in a heartbreaking fashion to USC that year. One of the best Rose Bowls ever played. There's been a lot of them, but one of the best of the last 10 years was Penn State versus USC with Saquon Barkley versus Sam Darnold, back in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. That was a fabulous game. So once again, they're 3-17 under James Franklin versus top 10 ranked teams. That's somewhat of an arbitrary cutoff, I get that, but a lot of college teams and college fans rank things based on top 10, what you do against top 10 or top 25 opponents. So that's a measuring stick. That's a measuring stick for James Franklin. He hasn't been able to get over the hump, and so that leads to the question, why? It could be a myriad of reasons. One thing I think his game management is quite poor. He really shrivels up in big moments, makes some just odd decisions, I would say. It's been time and time again in big games where he makes some, I don't want to say boneheaded moves, but just things that make you question, what is he thinking? What could he possibly be thinking? Specifically, one I want to mention is the Ohio State game in 2018. Ohio State versus Penn State in Happy Valley. Penn State had control most of the football contest until 2 late touchdowns by the Buckeyes. And then on 4th and 5, when Penn State is driving in midfield, they do a draw play on 4th and 5. 4th and 5, a draw. What? Make you scratch your head sometimes, man. So it's a little bit questionable decisions in big moments, a little bit of passiveness when you need to stay aggressive, things going on in that nature. But it also, I think, comes down to not just quite having enough elite talent. Penn State recruits well, but they don't have the developers on staff to raise those players up, and they don't have the consistency on staff to continue to recruit elite talent. James Franklin has gone through a myriad of assistants. He just lost Manny Diaz, who was perhaps his best defensive coordinator under his tutelage in that time, trying to rebuild his image and rebuild his brand. Manny Diaz was. And now he loses him again and had to replace him. So it's interesting. So a lot of influx in staff, a lot of questionable decisions in big game moments. What do you think? What do you think the reason is that Penn State cannot close on these big victories? What is it that's keeping them from being a top-tier program and knocking off these top 10 opponents? And will they do it in the 2024 season? Because they do avoid playing Michigan. They do host Ohio State. They do go to LA in the Coliseum to take on the Trojans. They lost a lot. Obviously, Caleb Williams, he was a turnover machine despite going number 1 in the NFL draft last season. I don't think he should have gone number 1, but he's still an important piece to replace. And then, of course, they do host the Washington Huskies, coming off a national championship appearance, losing their coach, losing Michael Penix, losing Adunze, and a bunch of other talented players on the roster. They're in a rebuild mode. Washington is not a team that just reloads. So anyway, the schedule does set up well for the Nittany Lions. Can they take this next step? Will Drew Allard make the next step? He brings in Julian Fleming at wide receiver, whereas last year, Penn State receivers were not getting separation. They just weren't. And it was really detrimental to Drew Allard. But working in the offseason, the summer conditioning, working with the receivers, is Allard, the former 5-star quarterback, going to be able to take that next step? Or do they just fall flat on their faces again in these top 10 battles? We were going to find out, man. It's going to be interesting. I don't think they do. I don't think they overcome their demons this year. I think James Franklin is kind of who he is. I think he will always be who he is. He is a good coach. Don't get me wrong. He's a good coach. He's not an elite coach, though. He's not somebody that can consistently win these type of ball games, as proven by the 3-17 record versus top 10 opponents. So those are my thoughts for today. What do you guys think down below? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you, and we'll catch you next time. Go Bucks, and God bless. We'll see you.